Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Approach radio show. My name is Sandra Alexander, and I'm so excited today. I have in the studio with me one of my favorite people in the whole world. Her name is Holly Wu, and Holly is the director and lead teacher at Chinook Spirit Children's Academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I don't think there's a bigger fan of this school than me. And what we're going to talk about today is very timely, I believe. Um, we've been talking about schools and we've been talking about school safety. We've been talking about all kinds of solutions as what do we do? How do we keep our kids safe in our schools? And how do we intervene and help kids who need help in our schools? And the subject we're really going to talk about today, and our focus is prevention. Our focus is how do we nurture our children to be other centered, to be kind and gentle and generous, and be concerned for one another as they grow into adults. And at Holly's school, I feel like they really have captured the model for that. And my goal, and I know Holly's is too, is to get the word out and get some ideas and tools out to other teachers, schools, and administrators on exactly what we're doing at Chinook Spirit and exactly how to make that happen for our kids. So, Holly, take it away. Tell us a little bit about your curriculum. I'd like to go straight for the curriculum. And you call it Life is Our Classroom. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
And so tell us a little bit about Life is Our Classroom and how we integrate teaching our kids all of these important aspects of heart and soul within an academic environment. That's not an easy thing to do, and it's not a thing that's being done across the board. It's very unique.
Well, asking the question gets us halfway there.
Yes.
So thank you for asking the questions about prevention. And Life is Our Classroom is a model that is student-centered. And as I listen to you talk about what's up in our school community and in education, I want to emphasize that curriculum needs to come from kids. And so does support for each other. And rather than a top-down approach to education, rather than this being about the adults, this is about the kids and the way the kids socialize and the way they support each other and the way they make school their happy place. So Life is Our Classroom has three components, but really it's about a perspective. The three components are a mindfulness piece, number one. Number two, we try to take the curriculum outside the walls of the classroom and do service projects and weekly service projects and weekly field trips and monthly service projects that are selected by the kids in advance. And then the third component is just it's a full curriculum. And so it's what a lot of schools offer, but it's from a perspective of PE is a social experience. When we have to have courage, when we have to work harder, then we're there to support each other through it, and we're there with the perspective that PE is about the life lessons it has to bring, not just about playing basketball. And so music, art, we're doing acting, we're doing chess club. We try all these different things as part of our curriculum in addition to the math, the literacy, the science, the social studies. We try all these things because they help make us well-rounded individuals. They show us our strengths, they show us our growth areas, and they allow other kids to learn that in each other and how to respect that in each other and seek out each other's help and support.
So when you say try, so you're really encouraging the students to, rather than to focus on one particular thing that they may be good at, to experiment with a lot of different things.
Yes, to be exposed to a variety of opportunities. in the community. We go so many places as part of our field trips. We bring guest speakers in and experiences, and they don't speak to us all, but you see that light, and the kids see that light in each other. Um, so that when they see one person be inspired, it energizes them, and they see that that person has been energized. I feel like all of these things make school worth going to, and and when that is happening, then school is a happy place. Then the kids are safe, even if they're not confiding in the adults, they're confiding in each other. When a little one gets hurt in our classroom, it's all the kids that rally around them to help that little one. The adults often can just watch because they're supporting each other, because that's the tone you create. If I could talk about the first component a little more, I might explain that tone. The first component, the mindfulness piece, you hear that a lot in education. In our classroom, we call it spirit time. And the first 5 minutes is stillness to oneself. The next 5 to 10 minutes is what we've kind of started calling a moving meditation. The kids can color, draw. They're really into Zentangles right now, which is a coloring drawing combination. Sometimes building, sometimes a yoga move, which they've learned in PE. It's time to themselves still. And then after that time period, they're invited for a lesson. And old school, we used to call this character counts. We don't call it that at our school because it's not just character. It's about what's up in the community. The teachers are watching, and then we're teaching. So last week we spoke about the environment. The kids have been kind of doing a service project related to that, and that's up for them. So we did some lessons with the environment. Before that, we did lessons on change, because that we've had a lot of change going on, and change is the one constant in life. So through role plays, through read alouds, through different experiences, they're invited for a lesson on this topic. They don't have to. They can keep having that time to themselves. And the reason we do this is we teach the kids, one of the reasons, that we care for ourselves so that we can care for others. And then what naturally comes from that is this willingness to give, and this willingness to, an ability, this capacity. They have the space within them now to help someone else, and the perspective to see when someone is in need of help.
Wow, and I really get that, and I think people out there listening will get that too, because we know, I mean, meditation and mindfulness and quieting the mind has, been being sung from the rooftops, for a very, very long time. But I've talked to some of the kids in your school, and what I love hearing them say are things like, during spirit time today, um, my mind was quiet. There were no thoughts. I wasn't thinking. And one of the things that we know about that type of meditative practice is when we aren't bombarding ourselves with thoughts, then that's when inspiration, creativity, and intuition can come in. And that's when our true nature can come out. Am I kind of on the right track here?
Absolutely. I have a visual in my mind of the things the kids choose to do during that time period where they have choices in spirit time.
And so
Yes.
later, whether it's later in the day or tomorrow, whatever it is, they've given that space for that to come in, to be who they really are. And that is the foundation of goodness and kindness and being there
Yes. And
for one another.
in our community, in our classroom, we have our own mix of challenging personalities, and these are maybe kids that in another setting, I don't like to think about it, but could be bullied in another setting. But in this setting, they are not. They just are not. They are appreciated for who they are, for what they have to offer, ups and downs, all of it, and it's valued.
So one of the questions that I think might be in the listeners' minds is how? So these kids, they all show up on the first day of school, right? Just like any other first day of school. I mean, you're a school. You have all um, of the teaching responsibilities as well. And so these kids all show up with their own history, kindergarten through, what is it?
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade. And they all come with their what's been going on in their families and what's been going on in perhaps other schools that they've been in. So, how do you start the ball rolling in the right direction?
Two things. One, I've learned from you in your spiritual approach to intervention, changing the marquee. Um,
And that's for those who don't know, that's a visual that we have in our own minds, right? About how we look at the children in our care.
yes, and so when we see the kids coming in, we see good people, and we teach the kids you are a good person. And when you're a good person and you miss the mark, how does that feel? And if in hindsight you could go back and fix it, would you do that again? You're a good person. How would you like to show up? And so that's how we approach it when the kids are there are mean things that happen, but they're not bullying things. There's a difference between mean and bullying, and sometimes that word gets overused. There are mean things, there are hurtful things, but those are the experiences that we get help with a situation with an adult, and we talk through and we see where it's really coming from, and we start with you're a good person. So that's the first thing. The second thing, each morning, in public schools, this is where I learned it. You start with a welcome, a morning message. And what we always put in our morning message was something that we started at our school. We end with I am, and we set our intention for the day. And sometimes the kids say silly things like, I am a spotted butterfly. But usually, and when they do, sometimes we let it go, and other times we say, and you are that because, and it might be because I get to fly. Okay, but usually what we get from kids are, I am grateful for my friends, or I am having a nice day. They don't say nice, actually. They say fun, or they say great. Or I hear a lot, I am aware. They say that a lot. This comes from them every morning, and sometimes we write it on the board. Sometimes we share it optionally. Sometimes we just place it in our heart and take it throughout our day. And then as we see our day unfolding, the grown-ups are there to remind them, you made that happen. So I would say those are the two things, the beginning steps to how it's different.
Yeah, so it sounds like from day one, you're setting a certain standard for the culture that you're creating in your classroom. And I know that I've been in education myself long enough to know that kids get that. Kids can be in two different environments and certainly learn how to behave differently depending on the culture. I love what you said about the school being safe for them, because I get a sense that what you're talking about is emotional safety.
Yes.
And creating I'm sure you have all the appropriate security safeties going too, but for them to feel safe emotionally, then encourage them to grow into young people and then adults who then feel safe in their own skin. How does this play out? I think one of the things that comes up, and like for instance, kids in your school, and obviously if it only goes to fifth grade right now, that how do they transition into a traditional sixth, seventh, eighth grade?
That is a question that's been on my mind a lot. And I used to feel a strong responsibility to make sure that our kids could go out into the big world and meld into corporate world eventually. And I feel differently now. I feel like they're changing things. And, you know, some adults laugh when we tell them everybody needs a moment of stillness in their day. I've been laughed at by adults in corporate America. They say, "Ha, it's not possible." That needs to change.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I feel like our kids are going to make different choices.
Hmm.
It may not be that they go to a sixth grade of 13 to 1500 kids and they feel comfortable there. They may feel like this doesn't work for me. I need someone to know me. I need a smaller place.
Well, and then that speaks to, our system and our public school system, and some of the larger private schools as well. And so I know one of the things that you and I both want from the bottom of our hearts is to be able to share. Mindfulness in public schools is becoming somewhat accepted. I think it's still a matter of figuring out how to fit it in and how to work it out. Um, but what I would like to talk about, well, two things. I'd like to talk about how then can we, you and me, you mentioned the spiritual approach to intervention. That was my piece when we met. That was the social emotional behavior intervention, changing teachers' perspective on how they hold their own energy around the children, and then the children's energy changes. And there's a process for that. And you mentioned that. So there's that there's your life. Um, uh, Life is our classroom, which you just explained to us. So, how do we, as people who have just so many hours in a day, how do we share this information? We're talking now, and people out there are hearing this radio show. We've done some other type of media spots. But how do then teachers, parents, administrators, interventionists like school social workers and occupational therapists, how do they take away what we're saying and integrate it into what they're doing? Because you and I know that it could be very simple. Just one small thing each day can make such a difference in a kid's life. So how do we go about sharing this with them so that they feel like they have the people listening have something to take away?
Each week we communicate the spirit time goals and process with our community in a newsletter. And so if someone were looking for ideas, we are following our students. So that's the best advice I'd have to say, is see what's up for your students, but sometimes it's just hard to know where to start. And so someone could get on our newsletter and get those tips, those spirit time inspirations. I feel like that would get them started.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I
really,
do
it's
too.
just like you said, it is a small shift. It's really just a perspective. You're doing read alouds anyway, probably. So it's just a choice. You choose this one instead every now and then. It's just a beginning. And you're sending your kids to library or art or music or PE, hopefully. And so you're 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 looking at it from a broader sense, not just what are those state standards that are being met. You're looking at it from a whole person, and what are the bigger things being learned here, or what are the bigger opportunities for learning that I could facilitate.
So if someone went to your website, which is chinookspirit.org, Chinook spirit.org. They will find contact information there. They'll also find more descriptions about the school, and then they could sign up for the mailing list.
Yes, they just click on a contact and they can put in their information and we
Great.
can reach out.
And in particular, then we will be sending out spirit tip plans, spirit tip ideas, and they're pretty simple, aren't they?
Very simple. It's something, in hindsight, I could have I could have very easily made these choices as a public school teacher. That's my background
Mm-hmm.
before starting this school. I could have. I didn't see how then. So I think that this would be that bridge to showing the shifts and how you can start to see things just slightly different.
Yeah, I like to sometimes call this undercover work because, when I talk about the other end of this, which is the behavior piece, and my website is um, uh, chock full of, all of those tools too. Um, but people initially, especially teachers in the classrooms that are dealing with lots of numbers of students, feel like it would be difficult to integrate. And yet, what we find is that any individual teacher, any individual interventionist can make their lives easier, not harder, by leading with some of these principles. And what we find, what I see at your school, and what we find with some of the other folks out there that are using the spiritual approach to intervention, we find that all kinds of amazing outcomes happen that bring peace really into chaos.
If I could just say, I think I've used every intervention or variation of it from math to literacy. I know about all the levels, but when you approach it from a whole person, the spiritual approach to intervention, it starts and ends there. It literally does. When you look at what energizes a person, the first step, what are the patterns of behavior? What can I do to meet the needs ahead of time? And visually, how can I connect with this person? When you do all those steps, the math and literacy fall into place. Everything does.
Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so, also, if folks listening would like to, or concerned on the behavior pieces as well, you could go to strengthofspiritconsulting.com, um, and get all kinds of fun and free resources and tips. And again, if we just take, I would just say to everyone, just take one idea, one spirit time idea, one intervention, spiritual intervention idea, and work, use it on one child, with one child that you're connecting with. Um, that's where it all starts, doesn't it?
And you don't forget it when you see it work.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's
It's
right.
undeniable. Yes.
So let me ask you this too: that you had mentioned the word field trips as being part of the Life is Our Classroom, and I really wanted to clarify that because there's field trips in other schools, and they go on field trips, not as often, certainly, they don't make it a weekly thing. But could you redefine, because I've seen what you do on what you're calling field trips, and they're not the standard field trip that we think of in the public schools, and certainly not the field trips that I went on when I was a kid.
Well, what's nice about going on field trips nearly every week is that when you go to your student's favorite museum, you don't have to see it all. It's really okay to stay in one section for 3 hours. So there's depth. And
Oh, wow.
and that's what's nice. We can go to the zoo, we can go to the explore a local science museum or to the natural history museum, and the kids are in small groups, and there isn't this checklist of agenda items that it's not this breadth of must scan and experience all of this. It's student led, and often we get kind of unique experiences because we're a small group. I know when I was in public schools, often the grade levels would plan a field trip. So you'd be going with 60 to 150 kids, and that is quite overwhelming for a place to host at one time. But when you're going with 20 or less, it's a nice sized group and they do really special things for you. So we're really lucky to be able to connect with the community. They're very generous. But I think the difference is the depth that we get to experience.
Yeah, that really explains it well, because it's not about getting a bunch of kids together and just getting a break from school.
Right.
It's about experiencing these different subjects in outside of the walls, I think is the words that you used,
Yeah.
outside of the walls of the classroom. Because, you know, I look back and certainly in all my years in education, those walls were considered by a lot of the kids, if not all of the kids, pretty confining.
And they even can be still. I'm grateful. We do this on Thursdays. I'm so grateful for our Thursdays because it gets me, their teacher, to see them outside of the walls. Because what I see them doing in math and literacy is completely opposite or different experience than I see them experiencing something hands on, petting a lizard or talking with a zoologist. I see them differently and
And
I
you see
get
the
to
light bulbs go off, right?
yes,
Yep,
yes.
yep.
And I'd also like to say about the field trips, sometimes it's just play. And our Thursdays are a break from routine, which is really good for kids. Kids need routine, but they also need a safe place to learn how to be flexible too. And that's the theme of our Thursdays. Our kids that thrive on routine learn I'm being flexible today. They say I'm going with the flow. and and sometimes it's just play. And and play can be messy. Play can be full of controversy and so is not sharing or so and so crowded me on the slide and you're helping them or you're watching them navigate it themselves so they're able to fix and experience their social situations. They're able to play deeply because when they only get 15 minutes at a time, they they don't get to pretend and they don't get to have a problem and they don't get to fix it. They just have to get wound up and go back to class.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's really important that sometimes it's just play.
I love that. Yeah, I really love that. And, um, you know, so both of us, you and I, are working on separate projects at the same time, right? You are looking forward to um, actual, and I'm sure people are thinking about this. Right now, we deliver, you and I both deliver our information in snippets. I have a couple of books. One is for children specific to autism, and that's Children of the Cosmos, and that's somewhat of a curriculum. And the Child and Family Spirit Workbook, both of those are on Amazon. But what I'm working on, and I'm so excited about, is what I call the Loves Curriculum, Loves. And that is a day by day, almost call it, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but a very much a spoon feeding of the spiritual approach to intervention for teachers to use in the classroom, hands on. You open the book, and this is what you do today. And then this is what you do tomorrow. And you're helping me with how many days are there in a school year and to be able to do that. And if you forget a day, so what? You just go to the next day and you do it. And you see transformation right before your eyes, and it doesn't take any additional time in the course of the day. And a lot of the work is shifting your own view and your own perspective about what your role is as a teacher and what your energy is and what you're bringing to the table. You are looking at life as our classroom um, as putting that into some formal written curriculum. Is that right?
Yes, I would like to share it and see it spread. I want to keep our school kind of small. I would love for the model to influence more in other settings.
Well, because you've had now, what is it, 4 going on 5 years of outcomes using this. This is your baby. The life is our classroom, which is kind of separate from the Chinook Spirit School, but it's what you adopted and what you're using,
Yes,
if I have
yes.
that right. And so you have these years of outcomes on what you've seen happen with these kids as they move through your school and then
Mhm.
move on into their middle school experience.
Yes, yes.
And they're good, right?
They are good. Yes, it's beautiful to see. Um, whether we get to be with the kids for their full elementary experience or we get to be a stop along the way, I know that it's a divine time and purpose.
Wonderful. Well, Holly, I know that we could go on and on about this, but the one thing I don't want us to forget to mention is that we are working together right now on a sustainability campaign for Chinook Spirit Children's Academy to ensure not only that the school go on forever and to open to more and more enrollment because, as you know, like you say, the phone is always ringing off the wall with parents who feel like this is really what they would like to have for their child. Um, but at the same time, then the sustainability and the getting the word out for the Life is Our Classroom model so that other schools may adopt the parts of it that are so crucial in order for our kids to grow into kind, loving people who see other human beings as other human beings who are to be cared about, cared for, and respected.
Nothing would make you more happy as a parent. That's really what you want.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. So, to learn more about the sustainability campaign, to support it, to jump into one of our volunteer meetings and be an ambassador for the school, we would love, love, love to hear from you. Again, it's chinookspirit.org is the easiest way to stay in touch with us. And I've jumped in to help support the campaign, so I'll be around for a few months
Yes.
as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, Holly, and thank you all of the listeners for jumping in on our spirit show today. And all I can say is everybody just keep sparkling, and we hope we hear from you.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye, Holly. Thanks a lot.